after the first sermon, we come to the second sermon. The first sermon deals with the Four Noble Truths, but the second sermon deals with not self characteristic of all phenomena. At the end of the first sermon, first the Venerable Kondanya became a Sotapanna, and then, according to the commentary, the other four became Sotapanna on the 4 following days. So, on the first day after the full moon day of July, the monk named Wappa became a Sotapanna. And then on the second day after full moon day, Badiya. And then on the third day after full moon day, Mahanama. And on the fourth day after full moon day, Asaji, the Venerable Asaji, became a Sotapanna. And after they became Sotapanna, they all asked Buddha for ordination. And so all of them were ordained by the Buddha by just calling them calm monks. And the youngest one, Asaji, played an important role in the life of the Venerable Sariputta. But that is another story. So, after all of the 5 disciples became Sotapannas, the Buddha assembled them on the 5th day after the full moon day, and then preached to them the discourse on not self. This discourse, the second discourse on not self, is even shorter than the first one. In this book, it occupies only 2.5 pages. Of course, the repetitions are omitted. So even with repetitions, it won't occupy more than, say, 4 pages. So it is a very short discourse. And if we were to recite it, it would take only about 5 minutes. But, as I said before, Buddha must have elaborated on the teachings contained in this sutta, and there might be questions and answers and explanations and so on, which are not recorded in the discourse proper. And this sutta is also important because it was the first time, maybe in the history of religions, that the doctrine of not self was proclaimed. This sutta makes Buddhism unique among religions because all other religions somehow or other accept what is negated here, accept the atta or soul or self in one way or another. And Buddha came to deny it. And this sutta was also delivered in the deer park at Benares, at Isipatana, the resort of sages or seers. So Buddha assembled them, and then Buddha called them monks, and then they said, Venerable Sir, and then the Buddha said. Now, we can divide this sutta into small sections. In the first section, Buddha said that 5 aggregates are not self. And in the second section, Buddha asked the monks whether the five aggregates are permanent or impermanent, so on, and then arrived at not self nature of the five aggregates. And then in the next section, Buddha said that all rupa, all feeling and so on, whether present or past or future and so on, are all impermanent, suffering, and so it is not proper to take them. A disciple should understand them with regard to them. They should understand that this is not mine, this is not I, and this is not myself. And then in the fourth section, Buddha explained the progress of their practice in a very short form. And the fifth section recorded the reaching of arahantship by the five disciples. Now, all the five disciples, at the beginning of this sutta, all the five disciples were sotapannas. And at the end of this second sutta, all became arahants. So Buddha said in the first section, Bhikkhus, form is not self. Were form self, then this form would not lead to affliction, and one could have it of form. Let my form be thus, let my form be not thus. And since form is not self, so it leads to affliction, and none can have it of form. Let my form be thus, let my form be not thus. Now here, the Pali word rupa is translated as form. So form here means material properties or just matter. Now you remember that the first of the five aggregates is the aggregate of matter or aggregate of corporeality. Now Buddha said form is not self. So the first one, rupa. Rupa is not self. Now before we go any further, we must understand what is self and what is not self according to the teaching of this discourse. Now, during the time of the Buddha, there were many people belonging to different faiths or different religions, and many of them believe in what we call a soul or a self. So they believe that there is something they call Atman or self, and they believe it to be eternal. And this soul abides in every being, in the continuity of every being. And this soul, which is permanent, never dies. So when the body disintegrates after death, then it takes another body, and then it takes another body, and so on. So this soul is like a bird, leaving one tree and going to another tree, and then yet to another tree, and so on. And in this way, the soul changes bodies or goes from one body to another or one life to another, and on its way purifying itself. And when it becomes really purified, it is said to be reabsorbed in the universal Atman or universal self. And that is what they call liberation or moksha. And also, people believe that that soul is what makes us do things and what experiences good or bad feelings in the body, and what administers our actions. And so that self, the individual self, that self is the master of our body, and so on. Buddha denied that self of here first rupa or matter, and then of feeling, and so on. So Buddha said form is not self. So the first aggregate rupa or matter is not self. Were form self, if it was self, then this form would not lead to affliction, because self here is taken as something which we can exercise power on. So if it was self, if form was self, then it would not lead to affliction. It would not be for affliction, because we all don't like affliction or disease or whatever, but we cannot avoid it, and so we have affliction or pain or whatever in the body. So if it was self, then form would not lead to affliction, and one could have it of form. Let my form be thus, let my form be not thus. So if we were born ugly, then we would just wish, may I be beautiful, and then we will become beautiful. If it were self, something like that. And since form is not self, so it leads to affliction. The fact that we have affliction shows that it is not self, and none can have it of form. Let my form be thus, let my form be not thus. Now, not self, or the Pali word anatta, has at least two meanings, or it is interpreted to mean two meanings, not self. One is having no core, having no real substance. That is one meaning. And here, core or real substance means the Atta. The Atta which abides in our bodies, or which experiences the good and bad feelings which we experience, and it is the Atma that something like give orders to us to do this thing and that thing. So the core or substance simply means the Atman. And the another meaning is that we cannot have any authority over it. So that is another meaning of no self or anatta. So if we say rupa is anatta, form is not self, we mean that we cannot have any authority over it. We cannot have any control over it. And that is the another meaning. So here when we say form is not self, we mean, maybe Buddha meant both meanings. It is not self, there is no core of self, or no real substance in matter, and also there is no possibility of exercising power over it, to have authority over it, to order it to be this way or to be that way, and so on. So we cannot have any authority over it, and so that means if we are born ugly, we'll be ugly all the life. What do you think about that? In this age of plastic surgery. You may be able to change your appearance a little through plastic surgery. But say the fact that our body is subject to pain or suffering, that we cannot change. It will always be with us. So if form was self, then it would not lead to affliction and so on. And this is the line of argument taught by the Buddha in this sutta. And then Buddha said, feeling is not self, the same as material properties. So if it was self, then it would not lead to affliction and so on. Then perception is not self. And then mental formations are not self. And then last one, consciousness is not self. So if consciousness was self, it would not lead to affliction. And one could have it of consciousness. Let my consciousness be thus. Let my consciousness be not thus. It is more evident when we practice meditation. If we want to get concentration, stillness of mind or consciousness, So we try hard to get concentration, and the more we try, the less we get concentration. So we cannot have consciousness. Let my consciousness be thus. Let my mind be on the meditation object only, and let it not go to, let it not wander, or let it not go to outside things. But you cannot will that way. And sometimes we have affliction in our thoughts, sorrow, lamentation, depression, and so on. Those also cannot be avoided. So if it was self, if it is possible for us to exercise authority over it, then we would not spend so much time meditating. Just in a day or maybe in an hour, we'll get what we are looking for. So this is the first section. And in this section, Buddha just said, form is not self, feeling is not self, perception is not self, mental formations are not self, consciousness is not self. In the next section, Buddha asked them questions, and they give answers to his questions. Because how do you conceive it? Is form permanent or impermanent? Now, they have become Sotapannas, so they have seen for themselves that these five aggregates are impermanent, suffering, and no self. So their answer is form permanent or impermanent? Their answer is permanent, Venerable Sir. Now, what is impermanent, painful or pleasant? Painful, Venerable Sir. Now, what is impermanent, what is painful and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus: this is mine, this is I, this is myself? Then the answer is no, Venerable Sir. So first Buddha asked, is form permanent or impermanent? So it is impermanent. Then what is impermanent? Is it painful or pleasant? He said it is painful. Now here, first, form is impermanent. Why is form impermanent? It is not mentioned here. It is impermanent because it disappears, right? It comes into being and then it disappears. Or in other words, it arises and it vanishes. It has a beginning and it has an end. So since it has a beginning and an end, it is impermanent. So form cannot be permanent. Form is impermanent because they have seen through vipassana knowledge for themselves that form arises and disappears. So they said it is impermanent. Then Buddha asked, what is impermanent? Is it painful or pleasant? They said it is painful. Now, here Buddha led them from the perception of impermanence to the perception of no self. Now, in order to understand impermanence, suffering, and also no self nature of things, then we have to understand what are the signs that show us that something is impermanent. We know this is impermanent. Why do we know this is impermanent? On what ground do we know this, that a certain thing is impermanent? So the mark or the sign of impermanence is said to be the three phases of existence, that is arising, and then continuation and dissolution. These three stages or these three phases of existence. So when you see something arise and then stays for some time, continues to exist, and then disappears, then this is a sure sign that this particular thing is impermanent. So the sign of impermanence or the mark of impermanence is arising, continuation, and dissolution. And another sign, actually the same, but explained in another word. Another sign for impermanent is that non-existence after having been. That means disappearing after coming into being. So if something comes into being and disappears, then you know that that thing is impermanent. So that is the sign by which we know that a certain thing is impermanent. So, and that is explained as non-existence after having been. So non, or let us say just disappearance after appearing. So dissolution after coming into being. And that is the sign of impermanence. So if you want to know anything, whether anything is impermanent or not, we have to look for this sign, whether it has a beginning or an end, or whether it has a three phases of existence. Then when we see one of these, then we can safely say that it is impermanent. Then whatever is impermanent, painful or pleasant, painful. Now Buddha said that whatever is impermanent is painful in the discourses he gave later. So the criterion for being painful is impermanence. So if something is impermanent, then it is surely painful, or it is dukkha. Now, why anything that is impermanent is painful or unsatisfactory? Or what is the sign of being painful? Is it pain? Now, painful means unsatisfactory, not just having real pain. So the mark or the sign for being painful or being unsatisfactory is constant oppression by rise and fall, or by arising and dissolution. So when you look at things, or when you contemplate on things, you see things just coming and going, coming and going. Whichever object you put your mind on, you always see that it arises and then it disappears immediately. So you take your thoughts as object of your meditation, and the moment you take one thought, then it disappears. Then there's another thought. There are some emotions, and you take them as object of meditation, and then they disappear. So whatever object you observe through meditation, what you see is just arising and disappearing, arising and disappearing. If you have to be seeing arising and disappearing all the time, you come to understand that everything is oppressed by arising and disappearing, tormented by arising and disappearing. So the mark for being painful or unsatisfactory is the constant oppression by rising and disappearing, or coming into being and dissolution. So when a thing is permanent, then it has a beginning and an end. It has an arising and a disappearing, and so it is said to be oppressed by arising and disappearing. So it is impermanent. So whatever is impermanent is dukkha, or unsatisfactory. And we can also think of it in another way. If we want to be permanent, we want things to last forever. So we want ourselves to live forever, but things will not last forever. We will not live forever, and so everything that is impermanent is unsatisfactory. So unsatisfactoriness is one meaning of the Pali word dukkha. Now the Pali word dukkha literally means something which is difficult to bear. And it normally means pain, painful feelings, and also the pain in the mind. But it also means something that is unsatisfactory, something that is unsatisfactory because it is impermanent. And so everything that is impermanent is painful. So they answered, painful, Venerable Sir. Now, what is impermanent, what is painful and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this is I, this is myself. Now Buddha led them to the notion of anatta. So if something is impermanent and is painful and is subject to change, then will it be fit for us to regard it thus? This is mine. Since it is disintegrating, it is disappearing from our view, so will it be fit to say, this is mine, this is I, this is myself? And the answer is no, Venerable Sir. So the Buddha led them to arrive at anatta from first anicca, impermanence, and then dukkha, suffering or unsatisfactoriness, and then to anatta, which is no self. Now, although we are talking about the impermanence, suffering, and no self, we still continue to think of ourselves as something a little enduring, right? We are the same people as we came in this hall a few moments ago. We are still we. Now, we fail to see the real impermanence because we do not see the rising and disappearing of things. Because when we do not see the rising and disappearing of things, we are tricked by the continuity. So there is continuity. And this continuity hides the real nature of impermanence under it. So when we see things with this continuity in mind. So whether we look at, say, whether we think of a series of consciousness or whether we look at the material things, and we look at them with the notion of continuity there. So long as we cannot penetrate this continuity, we cannot cut this continuity and go inside, we will not really see the impermanence of things. And in order to see the impermanence of things, we have to see the rising and falling of things. Until we see things as really rising and falling, arising and disappearing, we will not see the impermanence of things. So this continuity is like a cover over impermanence. Now, let us say a ring of fire. Somebody say make a circle of a torch, and then we say we see a ring of fire. But all of us know that there is no such thing as a ring of fire. It is just fire or light at different places, at different times, along the circumference of a circle. But we see them, lights at different places, at different times. Our minds take them as one continuity. So we connect them in our mind along the circumference of a circle. But we see them, lights at different places, at different times. Our minds take them as one continuity. So we connect them in our mind, and then we deceive ourselves into believing that we see a circle of light or circle of fire. But if we could take a picture of that circle, say with very first rate, say a thousandth of a second or maybe a 10,000th of a second, then we will see only lights at different places and not as a circle. In the same way, we see things as being connected. So long as we cannot pinpoint the components and see them as arising and disappearing, we will always connect them as a whole, and so see them as a whole. Even those who meditate see impermanence or rising and falling actually only when they meditate. You go out of the hall and you get out of meditation, you go back home, and then this notion of permanency come back to you. So it is very important and very difficult to really see the impermanence of things. Here, impermanence of things means momentary impermanence. Now, you drop a cup and it breaks, and then you say it is impermanent. Somebody dies and you say, oh, he is impermanent, she is impermanent. And that impermanence is not difficult to see. You don't need to meditate in order to see that kind of impermanence. And when we say impermanence with regard to vipassana meditation, we don't mean that kind of impermanence. The same thing, say when you prick your finger with the needle and there is a pain and you say, oh, it is dukkha, it's painful. But that understanding of dukkha is not meant in vipassana. So in vipassana, what you have to understand is that constant oppression by rising and falling. To see that. So to see dukkha even in what is called pleasure, what is called pleasurable feelings. So that kind of impermanence, that kind of unsatisfactoriness, you can only see through vipassana meditation. So the continuity hides the impermanence, and if we want to see impermanence, we have to cut through this continuity. By what? By seeing the rising and falling of things. Now, with regard to pain or dukkha, the explanation in the commentary is that dukkha is concealed by posture. That means, I think, dukkha in the body. There's always painful sensations in the body, but we are not aware of them because they are concealed by posture. That means they are concealed by change of posture. So you sit for some time and you have a pain here, and then you change posture. So the painful feeling disappears. So you don't know that there is really a painful feeling. That is why you are instructed to keep still as much as you can, so that you see that there is really pain. So the painful nature of things is concealed by the change of postures. And when change of posture is avoided, so when you stay still for say, a considerable period of time, then that pain becomes apparent. It becomes evident. It is also always real, but it seems to become real at that time. And so painful nature of things, especially painful nature in the body, is concealed by changing of posture. And when you avoid changing of posture, then they become, these painful feelings become evident. So in order to see painful nature in your body, then you have to sit still and try to see what kind of sensations or feelings arise at that time. And then the no-self nature of things. And no-self nature of things is concealed by the notion of impactness. That means when we take atta to be a core, that means compact, solid. Now, if we fail to see, break the compactness, then we will not see the real nature of anatta. So in order to see the real nature of anatta, we need some analysis. So that is why we try to see one by one, say this is contact, this is feeling, this is perception, and with regard to material things also we say this is earth element, this is water element, this is wind element, this is fire element, and so on. So that is, we analyze these phenomena in our mind so that we see things separately one by one. If we cannot see things separately one by one, we cannot break this notion of compactness, because we see things as compact things. And if we cannot break this notion of compactness, we cannot see the no self in nature of things. And that compactness is sometimes with regard to a mass of material properties, and also something like a mass of mental states. And also sometimes the compactness is taken with regard to their functions. Now, there are many states, say many mental states, and also there are different kinds of material properties, and they have their own functions, individual functions. For example, the contact has one function, feeling has another function, perception has yet another function, so they have their own functions. If we fail to see these individual functions and take them to have only one function, then we cannot get the notion of compactness of them. We see them as one whole, connected whole. And when we see them as one connected whole with regard to their function, then we will not be able to see the anatta nature of things. And also these states, or especially mental states, have different ways of taking objects. That means they have different ways of responding to the objects. Lobha has one kind of response to the object. Dosa has another, right? So when you respond to the object with lobha, that means you are attached to it. So you respond to it, or you react to it by attachment. When you have dosa, anger, and you respond to it with aversion, and so on. So there are different ways of reacting or responding to objects. But if we take all these ways of responding as only one, not as individually different, then we take all these things as one thing, as one whole mass, one whole mass of compact. And so long as we see them as one whole compact, and we will not be able to see the insubstantial nature of things. So that is why, in order to see another nature of things, that means the coolest nature of things, we need to analyze mind in different components, and also material matters in different components, and we need to see their individual functions and also their way of responding to different objects. If we cannot see that, we do not see another nature of things clearly. Because on superficial examination, everything seems to be compact. Everything seems to have substance. Now, all of us think that we cannot see through this book, because this book is real compact, very solid. But if you can put this book under a microscope which can magnify, say, a million times, this book will become like a sieve. Actually, there are spaces in this book, but they are so compact here in the book that we are not able to see the spaces. But when enlarged for a million times, then the space begin to show, and we see that it is not really a compact thing. It is like a sieve. So in the same way, just as they use a microscope in the science labs, we use our mind. We use our concentration of mind to see through this compactness, or to break this compactness and arrive at the insubstantiality of things. Therefore, it is important that in order to see the impermanent, we must try to see rising and falling. In order to see the painful nature of things, we must keep the postures, or we must keep ourselves unmoved for some time. And in order to see the insubstantial nature of things, then we must do some analysis. Break things down into their components, and then try to see their functions and responses. So these are the things, or the tools we, especially the meditators, use to discover the impermanent, suffering, and insubstantial nature of things. So with regard to form, the Buddha asked, is form permanent or impermanent? And the answer is impermanent. And what is impermanent? Is that painful or pleasant? The answer is painful. And what is impermanent, painful, and subject to change? Is it fit to be regarded as this is mine, this is I, this is myself? And the answer is no. The same with the other aggregates. Is feeling permanent or impermanent? Is perception permanent or impermanent? Are mental formations permanent or impermanent? Is consciousness permanent or impermanent? And then the same answers or similar answers follow. So it is not fit to regard the five aggregates as, say, this is mine, this is I, this is myself. So this way Buddha led them to arrive at the no-self nature of things. Now in the next section, Buddha said that any kind of form whatever, whether past, future, or presently arisen, whether gross or subtle, whether in oneself or external, whether inferior or superior, whether far or near, must, with right understanding how it is, be regarded thus. This is not mine, this is not I, this is not myself. So there can be different kinds of form or different kinds of matter, past, future, or present, or gross or subtle, or internal or external, or inferior or superior, or far or near. But with regard to these, you must have the correct understanding. And that is, this is not mine, this is not I, this is not myself. With regard to feeling also, feeling may vary as to past, future, present, and so on. But the correct understanding about those feelings is that this is not mine, this is not I, this is not myself. And the reason is stated earlier. Because if it was self, then it would not if it was self, it would not lead to affliction and so on. So feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, all these, with regard to all these, the right understanding should be, this is not mine, this is not I, this is not myself. Next, Buddha explained to them the progress made by a disciple. So Buddha said, because when a noble follower who has heard the truth sees thus, he finds estrangement in form. That means he becomes wearied with form. He becomes dispassionate with forms. When he sees form as impermanent, as painful, and as no self, then he will not be attached to that form. So he finds estrangement in form. He finds estrangement in feeling, in perception, in mental formations, and in consciousness. That means he becomes wearied with 5 aggregates. So this can be achieved only through vipassana meditation. So through vipassana meditation, a yogi comes to see the impermanence, suffering, and soulless nature of things. And so when he really sees these 3 characteristics of things, then he becomes dispassionate towards them. He becomes wearied with them. And that is through vipassana meditation. When he finds estrangement, passion fades out. Now, Buddha was describing vipassana meditation here, but it is very, very brief form. And there are many stages left out in this statement. So when he finds estrangement, passions fade out. So here, finding estrangement means vipassana meditation up to the last moment. So here, the estrangement means not only wearied with 5 aggregates, but after becomes wearied with 5 aggregates, he wants to get free from these 5 aggregates, and when he wants to get free from these 5 aggregates, he makes more effort, and so last he arrives at what is called equanimity about formations. That is still vipassana meditation. So here, finding estrangement means all vipassana practice up to the higher stage of vipassana. So when he finds estrangement, that means after finding estrangement, then he becomes passionless, or his passion fades out. And fades out not really mean fading slowly or gradually, but it is just disappearance. So passion fades out really means the moment of realization or the moment of enlightenment. Because at the moment of enlightenment there is path consciousness, and path consciousness eradicates mental defilements altogether, so passions altogether. So that is meant when he said passion fades out. It is not like fading, something fading out slowly. With the fading of passion, he is liberated. That means after the passions fade out, there is liberation. Now, here he is liberated. So, he is liberated means he reaches the fruition stage. Immediately after path consciousness, there are 2 or 3 moments of fruition consciousness. So, he is liberated here means he reaches these moments of fruition consciousness. So, the path consciousness is always followed by 2 or 3 moments of fruition consciousness. So at fruition consciousness, he has been liberated, or he is liberated. So at the moment of path consciousness, he is liberating himself. He is destroying the mental defilements. So at the next moment, he has already done that. So he is said to be liberated at the moment of fruition consciousness. When liberated, there is knowledge that he is liberated. That means after the fruition moments, there is lapse into life continuum, and again there is reflection. There is knowledge that he is liberated means that. So after the enlightenment thought process, there come the other thought processes of retroflexion or reflection on the path, on the fruition, on nibbana, and on defilements destroyed, and on defilements that are remaining. So reflection on these things arise after the fruition moments. So it is said that when liberated, so after the fruition moment, there is knowledge that he is liberated, or there is knowledge that I am liberated. He understands birth is exhausted. The holy life has been lived out. What can be done is done. Of this there is no more beyond. So he also, like Buddha could say here, birth is exhausted. So rebirth, there is no more rebirth for me, that means. The holy life has been lived out because he has gone to the highest stage of enlightenment. His holy life has been lived out. What can be done is done. So what is to be done is already done with regard to destroying mental defilements and reaching arahantship. Of this there is no more beyond. So he hasn't got to do anything more to reach the stage of arahantship because he has already reached the stage of arahantship. So Buddha describes in this section the progress of the practice leading to the retrospective thought processes following after the enlightenment. This is what the Blessed One said. The bhikkhus were glad and they approved his words. So they were all pleased with what the Buddha has said. Now during this utterance, the hearts of the bhikkhus of the group of 5 were liberated from taints through clinging no more. That means they became arahants at the end of that discourse. So when they became arahants, they were liberated from taints or mental defilements through clinging no more. So they no more cling to anything. So without any clinging, they become liberated from taints at that time, and then they will be liberated from all suffering when they die. So the 5 disciples became arahants after this second sermon, the sermon on the characteristic of not self. Now, in this sutta, you have heard this sutta. Buddha said, form is not self, feeling is not self, and so on. But he did not say that there is no self. Did he say? No. So there are people who pick up this and said that Buddha did not deny Atman altogether. What Buddha said was, this is not self, this is not self. But he did not say that there is no self. So many people, especially Western people, try to say that Buddha did not deny Atman. So they want a Buddhism with the belief in Atta or Atman. But now, according to the analysis of the Buddha, there are only these 5 aggregates in the world, nothing more. And when he said all these 5 aggregates are not Atta, then it amounts to saying that there is no Atta. Suppose there are 10 people in this hall, and then I say not any one of them is an arahant. That means there is no arahant in this hall. But there is one more argument, and that is, I think, more powerful. the fact that Buddha said Rupa is not Ada means that there is an Ada which he negates. If you say this is not Ada, then there is Ada, but only this is not that. So by saying this is not Ada, where 5 aggregates are not Ada, then Buddha automatically accepts that there is an Ada. Only these 5 aggregates are not Ada. So it is there another argument. What do you say about that? If you say this is not a pen, then you accept that there is a pen. Only this is not a pen, this is a calculator. This is a watch. Now, not all words have corresponding reality. Sometimes words are used without real meaning. In our books, such words are given as, let me see, the horn of a hare, a rabbit. A rabbit has no horn. So there can be the expression, the horn of a hare, but it has no real correspondence. The son of a barren woman. A barren woman has no sons, but there is a saying, the son of a barren woman. And then the hair on a tortoise. I don't know whether tortoises have no hair or not, but it is believed that they have no hair. So the hair of a tortoise means nothing. And then there's another expression, sky flower. There can be no sky flower, no flower in the sky. I mean, without being attached to any tree or whatever. So there can be words in usage which really have no meaning, but still they are used. So according to the Buddha, the word Atta is like that. Although there is a word Atta, it has no corresponding reality. So suppose there are five horns here, and if I were to say none of these 5 horns is a horn of a rabbit, and I don't mean that there is a horn of a rabbit. So whatever it is, or whether we like it or not, I think we have to accept that Buddha said that these 5 things are not Atta, and by that Buddha means that there is no Atta. We may not like Buddha's saying, or we may even say, or you may even say, Buddha was wrong, say when he says that there was no Atta or whatever. But I think we should not say that Buddha also accepted Atta, because the notion, the belief in Atta is always described as a wrong view by the Buddha. And so, whether we like it or not, I think we must accept that Buddha taught the doctrine of Anatta. So this is the end of the second discourse, the discourse on the characteristic of Anatta. And there is one discourse more, the third discourse, which is a fire sermon. But I cannot go to the fire sermon tonight.